Hero Tales from History by Smith Burnham. Alexander, the boy who conquered the world. Alexander was the son of Philip, king of Macedon, a country to the north of Greece. His father was a great general as well as a king. Young Alexander was a strong, active, handsome lad. A story is told of his breaking a wild horse which had been presented to Philip by a neighboring king. This horse was named Bucephalus, the Greek word for bull-headed. He reared, bit, snorted, and pawed the air if anyone tried to mount him. King Philip was indignant at being given such a present, and was about to send back the bull-headed beast as too dangerous to the life or limb of anyone who attempted to ride him. But Alexander noticed that the horse was frightened even at his own shadow. He begged his father to let him conquer such a splendid animal. The lad was so much in earnest that the king decided to let him try. The young prince showed no fear as he walked up beside Bucephalus and patted him on the neck. He wanted to keep the horse from being frightened, as his fright was the cause of his wildness. By degrees, the boy managed to turn the great brute's head toward the sun so that he could not see his shadow. Throwing off his velvet mantle, Alexander suddenly sprang on the horse's back. Instead of trying to restrain or guide the frightened steed, the boy let him go as fast as he would across the plain. When Bucephalus grew tired, the shrewd rider began to turn his head this way and that, while speaking kindly and patting him soothingly. When they returned from their long run, Bucephalus obeyed the prince's word and touch as a gentle, well-trained horse should. It is said that the huge beast learned to kneel for Prince Alexander to mount, and that he carried his young master proudly through many a battle. The king was so pleased with the courage and wisdom Alexander displayed in conquering Bucephalus that he said to his son, "You should have a larger kingdom than Macedon to rule." As if to fulfill this wish, Philip went to war with several of the neighboring kings and left his 16-year-old son to rule over Macedon while he was absent. Then Alexander was allowed to command certain companies of the Macedonian army, and this he showed wonderful courage and wisdom. Philip was murdered when Alexander was 20. Then the kings whom the father had conquered tried to throw off the rule of Macedon. They said, "This new king is only a boy." But Alexander answered when he heard it, "They think I am a boy. I will show them that I am a man." And he did, not only by defeating the kings and armies his father had beaten, but by conquering the other states around Macedon, whose kings had turned in to help Alexander's enemies. At this time, the greatest monarch in Asia was Darius, king of the Persians. He sent several nobles of his realm to seek the friendship of Alexander, king of Macedon. These men were surprised when they saw that the young ruler was not interested in their stories of the wealth and splendor of the vast countries of Darius. Instead, Alexander wished to hear about the extent of their kingdom, about its different peoples, and about the location of the rivers, roads, and cities. The men from Persia said to members of the court of Macedon, "Our old king is rich, but your young king is great." Alexander, both king and general, had a strange thirst for power. He left a true friend to control his kingdom in Europe and started east, with only a small army, to conquer the vast countries on the continent of Asia. King Darius laughed at the very idea of a mere boy with so few soldiers coming to conquer him and the greatest and richest empire in the world. He came to meet the Macedonian army with an armed host about 10 times as large as Alexander's. That boy soon routed and scattered the hosts of the Persians, and King Darius had to fly for his life, leaving his wife and her mother behind as Alexander's prisoners. The young conqueror was kind to these and to all other prisoners of war. This was wholly different from the custom then, for ancient conquerors killed or made slaves of those whom they defeated in battle. Alexander gained 2 great victories over Darius and captured other kingdoms and walled cities after long sieges and hard-fought battles. While in Asia, he came to a temple where there was a puzzle which no one had solved. This was a strange knot in a long leather strip. This knot, it had been prophesied for centuries, could never be undone except by the one who was to conquer Asia. Alexander felt that he must unloose this terrible tangle in some way or other. So when he was brought into the temple, which was at a place named Gordium, he took his sword and cut the strangely knotted thong in pieces. Ever since then, when anyone meets and solves in a surprising way what seems to be an impossible problem, he is said to have cut the Gordian knot, as Alexander did in the temple at Gordium. The young conqueror marched down into Africa and not only took possession of Egypt, the greatest kingdom of that vast region, but built, near one of the mouths of the wide river Nile, a city to which he gave his own name. That city, Alexandria, is still one of the largest cities on the continent of Africa. It became necessary for Alexander to lead his army farther eastward into Asia. After his great successes, he began to indulge his appetites in eating and drinking and in other harmful ways. Once, in a fit of drunken anger, he killed his best friend. This made him ashamed and sad when he came to himself and realized what he had done. Because of his many victories, Alexander is called the Great. When he was only 26, he had conquered all the important nations in the world of his day. It was because he had now nothing to strive after that he gave way to evil passions. He is said to have wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. He became ill and died as a result of his excesses, leaving no child or relative to rule over the great kingdoms he had acquired. Although Alexander the Great had conquered the world, he could not govern himself. Hundreds of years before his day, Solomon, the wise, rich king, wrote in his Proverbs, "He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city."